present. And I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. It should be here. All right. So thank you all for joining tonight. I, like a lot of you, have felt a little overwhelmed with reading, researching, understanding, and navigating USP 797 guidelines and the updates. And honestly, I feel like in the end, the updates really work in our favor. It has been quite frustrating. A lot of people have thought they were going to have to shut down or not be able to operate their business. That's not true. It's just like anything in life. We need to know, and I'm with you all on this. What do we need to be doing so that we can make it happen? And sometimes getting that clarity is an issue. So I just want to kind of, as much as I can, because I have notebooks, I have notepads, but as much as I can simplify some things, and this will definitely lean towards, if you're not planning to start with a hood, because if you are going to have and utilize a hood or other type of equipment like this, that would be a whole separate, completely different webinar. So we're kind of going of, this is what, it's just an overview, okay? Just an overview, and then ask questions. In the chat, you can do that throughout the time that I am speaking. You know what, let's rephrase that. Don't do it throughout the time I am speaking. Maybe I'm trying to make sure I don't get distracted. Oh, never mind, just type them. If you think of it, type it or jot it down. At first I was going to say, maybe just wait till the end, but then it may be 100 questions flood in. So it's okay to type them, and then I'll just kind of scroll through, okay? I'll try to stay focused and not get distracted. So a little bit about me. I do get distracted easily, but I'm Dr. Stewart, Rainika Stewart. I didn't put my name on the slide, but I am in Tampa. And I own Adaptive Wellness. It's also known as Adaptive Wellness and Recovery, which is my concierge nursing business. It started with post-op care and IV therapy. And I now do have a brick and mortar, but one part of my business is still concierge care, which is private post-op recovery for clients who have mainly plastic cosmetic surgery, but we do take care of clients after any surgery. And then also some mobile IV therapy, and then a brick and mortar where I do IV therapy, hormone replacement therapy, and medical weight loss. And then also during the process of growing and evolving as a nurse entrepreneur and looking for a circle of friends and a community, I founded the Concierge Nurse Network. And my goal there is visibility, networking, support, and resources. So this webinar and some of the webinars that I do, they're free, as you all can tell. I do have paid courses and events, but I also do free things as a way to build the community, give back to the community, and just support other nurses, because that is something that I love to do. So enough about me. Let's get into what you are here for. So USP 797 is probably something you heard from the day you decided or thought, I want to do IV therapy. And if anyone can't see the screen, let me know, but I think you should all be able to see it. So the whole idea behind it is patient safety, reducing risk of contamination. I don't know if any of you may remember, but some years ago, there was a big ordeal with sterile products that were injected, I want to say, in the epidural space on patients. And a lot of them ended up with infections, sepsis, but there were deaths involved. So USP 797 foundationally is safety, standardized processes and procedures for how those of us who compound or handle sterile products, how we go about that process, okay? And not only ourselves, but also our team, our staff, or anyone else working in our business. So we always, I started again in 2023 with IV therapy, and it really wasn't so regulated. And it wasn't that these guidelines didn't exist, they did, But typically these applied more so to pharmacies. And I didn't even start hearing about 797 until I was about a year in and had to make some changes in my business. And I don't fault the person who taught my IV therapy class, because it just wasn't, it just wasn't knowledge that was there. So with that said, made some changes, and ever since then, and even just during the course of being a business owner, I'm really big on researching and really trying to look for, risk management issues. So I love to research. I love to research. So I have been completely buried in these regulations and pages of things that I could find, so that I could, again, make the changes that need to be made in my business upcoming, but also support you all. So again, the primary purpose is preventing harm. Of course, we're all on board with that. And to be sure that we're storing properly, we're following aseptic technique, on and on and on. So I won't bore you with that, because we all know, right? But this article I had saved, and this is going to navigate us, but I thought this was quite intriguing and interesting. So IV therapy, again, wasn't so much on the radar. It wasn't something that was really mainstream. Now, IV therapy, as we also may know, is not new. It's been around. And when I look back through history and read some books on and relating to IV therapy, I see these big monster-sized recipes and formulas that were being used. And it didn't appear to me that anyone was dealing with, compounding standards or hoods, and really just only following aseptic technique, right? So it is not new, but the FDA, as more and more drip lounges have popped up, we know, like you said, someone said, on the strip, mobile drip companies, lots and lots of us as nurses and nurse entrepreneurs have come onto the scene. IV therapy has been an amazing gateway into nurse entrepreneurship for us, something that we could do alongside full-time jobs, contracts, all of the above. So it's a very attractive option for business ownerships. And even though there's tons of franchises and all out there, of course, we know that it's something that's pretty simple to start, or at least it was, right? So with that said, as they have multiplied and grown, it has become something that's more on the FDA radar. So we always have to remember that what we're doing with IV therapy is not FDA approved. And so that, to me, already puts us on a bit of a radar anyway. And then more and more of us entering this field and starting these drip lounges, and no one really saying this is what we're doing, these are what the standards are, people not really knowing. It is, and truly, I've heard some horror stories, but honestly, I'm surprised I haven't heard more. But it is a recipe for disaster. And again, all of us want to do what's right. All of us want to avoid harming our patients, clients, and we just need to know what we need to do, okay? We just want to know. And that is, even now, that's still hard to really find and understand. So yes, this evening, I am sharing with you what I found and what I can within about the scope of an hour. And I'll send an email for those who registered with a couple of links and more. There's a video that I watched last year as they were releasing these guidelines, and I think that's a good thing to sit and watch. And USP797 guidelines in their entirety, I can find summaries, I can find resources, but if you want the actual guidelines, and you may need to consider this if you are going to be using a hood, you really will have to pay and download them. And that, again, that may be worth it investment if that's the route you're going. So with that said, the FDA has become aware of business models such as IV hydration clinics, medical spas, and mobile IV infusions that are compounding drugs that may not meet the conditions of Section 503A or comply with state regulations. And unfortunately, it's true. Unfortunately, it could be contaminated or otherwise poor quality. Compounded products can lead to serious patient illnesses, including death. So this article goes on to talk about a little bit of that and how it's on their radar, they're having meetings. And here's a few observations. And y'all, if you scroll social media and see other IV therapy clinics, hopefully you're not one of them that's on here. I know you're not. because you wouldn't be here if you didn't care so much, right? But you can scroll social media and see so many of these things, ungloved hands, people preparing drips in areas where they should not be prepared, not sanitizing if they are inside of a certain area, like a hood area, not doing proper sanitation, not using the right equipment, hazardous waste. I see this a lot even in the post-op world that I live in most of the time, but hazardous waste or hazardous drugs handled without the proper container. So I see biohazards, we generate sharps of medical waste, people not utilizing the proper medical waste disposal. So there's so many things that are happening. And this just goes on to talk about a case of a 50-year-old patient hospitalized for a septic shock after receiving an IV vitamin infusion in her home. And the blood culture grew Pseudomonas. I ain't even going to pronounce that next one, but it calls out the clinic, unfortunately. And this was in California, and they are a lot similar to me. Like, this is somebody that looks just like me. They provide sexual health products, hormone replacement therapy, weight loss, et cetera, et cetera. So this is every one of us that it could be, right? If we're not careful and if we don't pay attention. So yeah, very unfortunate. And none of us want to be the example or who someone learns from. So that's one. The FDA is watching. And it is important to be clear that these are not FDA approved products, or also in how we advertise and how we talk about what we offer, but being careful with what you post. It's great to want to share the journey and share content, but it is super important, and that's not what this is about. But just side note, it's very important to be careful about what you're doing and what you're posting, okay? Okay, what just happened? So does USP797 apply in your state? Yes, it applies in every single state, all 50 states, okay? It applies. It's just, and these are minimum, so minimum standards. It just may be that your state may have additional requirements. So some states may require a certain type of hood. So when I say hood, let me go ahead and get to that. I'm talking about laminar flow hoods, and these are workspaces. And we'll keep this short. Y'all see the big long explanation, but in short, it's designed to keep contamination down. So there are rules to when you are required, and there's no choice. If you are not meeting certain requirements or certain stipulations, you have to use this, okay? And it has to do with, at the foundation, the number of ingredients you're mixing, okay? Now, let me say this. Excuse me. If you're using a laminar flow hood, we're going to call this, and something else I'm going to talk about, an isolator, primary engineering controls, PECs. So primary engineering controls, if you're using these, you are going to have additional requirements. So you have inspection requirements, you have testing and certification requirements. These have to be done every so often, according to USP 797. Again, I won't go into all those specifics, but there's a lot of them. You have to have a certain type of hood or a certain type of environment that is created in that hood, known as ISO 5. And that just refers to, okay, let's see, I'm looking at my paper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 ISO classes that I see outlined on one of my resources. And so there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? I want to say 1 must be room air. But with that said, the minimum standards for this is ISO 5 for what we would be doing. There are additional requirements if you're doing other levels of compounding, but for the level we would be doing, typically you're looking at a minimum of ISO 5 for your hood. So let's see. I see a question that has popped up. If you are in Minnesota and Wisconsin has different rules, do you fall under the rules where you are preparing? Absolutely. I would definitely say if you are operating in whatever state and they have different rules from each other, you go by where you are. Definitely. Great question. So hoods require additional setup, additional logs, additional certifications. So when people say, I see this, people can get very judgy in Facebook groups. And I've seen these comments, well, why wouldn't you just get the hood? Or why wouldn't you just automatically buy a hood? A lot of us are starting up. The process and what is involved in using a laminar flow hood or other primary engineering control is extreme. Now, is that something we should consider? Yes, but you're not just getting a hood. Once you get to the point of compounding is at the level that requires a hood, it's not just a hood that you're dealing with. You're dealing with, again, certifications, you're dealing with air quality testing, you're dealing with having to set up your clinic a certain way, a clean room, potentially with the laminar flow hood, and then with the other one is something called an isolator, which doesn't, it's an all-in-one solution. So it doesn't necessarily require the additional clean room setup. So once you get into this, again, there's so much more than you're just even, let me say this too, even when I started, let me hide this. Even when I started, everything was just buy a hood, set it up in your clinic or set it up and you're good. No, you're not. You have to certify, you have to test it, you have to have the area set up a certain way surrounding that hood. And then there's also the isolator. So that's another option, but some states may require one or the other. And the one that you're buying or purchasing from a given vendor, you have to also be sure that that is going to be compliant with your state board of pharmacy. So let me make a note there. When I said that these requirements are minimal, and that there may be additional requirements, who determines those additional requirements? It's not your board of nursing, it's not your board of medicine, but it is in fact your state board of pharmacy. So if at all possible, at this point, I'm sure they're always flooded, but I would go to see if you can go. Some states have already been very transparent and you can go on their site and find exactly what you need to know. Other ones, it may require an email. That's what I would go for, just so I have written record. But some state boards of pharmacy are stricter than others. Some of them may require an inspection before you ever open. So there's no way that, like, me being in Florida could tell you. This is kind of part of your due diligence as you are starting or integrating this as a business owner. Okay, so let me go back to another slide. So this is just talking about ISO 5 designation. So that is what our typical minimum. And with that said, when we're using a hood or an isolator, it should be creating at least an ISO 5 class environment, which just means there's no more than 3,520 particles sized 0.5, is that nanometers or larger, per cubic meter of air, right? So when you're dealing with a vendor, you again have to be sure that they know their stuff to help you be compliant, and that also you're getting the equipment that is required by your state. So I skipped right to the hood because that's always the question. But there are ways or times that you may not, this is a little blurry, that you may not need a hood. So let me see. I hate that came out blurry. It's a slide from a presentation, the presentation that I'm going to link. So don't get too upset. I'm going to link y'all this presentation, but it's just a screenshot. So one of the first things that changed in USP797, if you haven't been around, this won't even be a change to you. But what they did do, they made it easier for us really on some things, okay, on some things. But what they said was, instead of there being different categories of compounding or categories of compounded sterile products, that's what CSPs are, they just decided that, so they went from risk levels, high, medium, low, they went to categories. So category 1, 2, 3. So when we operate or prepare a vitamin drip in a hood, typically we're going into category 1, right? So it tells you that your BUD is 12 hours and 24 hours refrigerated. And then it goes all the way up to 2, 3. 3 would be more so like what the compounding pharmacy is sending us, okay? So typically we're going to fall in 1 or 2 when we're mixing, depending on a whole variety of factors. Okay, so let's just keep it simple. So that was one thing that changed, but this was actually something in our favor. It actually made things simple. Now let's go to a chart. I have Is it this one? Okay, let's get this on the screen. Okay, so I found this wonderful article that, especially if you've been around and were familiar with the guidelines up until the ones that came out last year. So they came out last year in November 2021. They go into effect November 1st. I'm sorry, November 2022. I lost a year somewhere. They go into effect this year, November 1st, 2023. I found this wonderful article from, because I always want to give their credit, Pharmacy Purchasing Products. Get on their email list, because I know even tomorrow they have a webinar talking about preparing for clean room inspection. So I feel like it's worth it because I'm on their mailing list and this came to me. So this is a great article. It has lots of great information, but I want to go right to this. This was super helpful to me. Okay, super helpful to me. So I saw a lot of people saying, oh my goodness, we can't do mobile anymore. Oh my goodness. The 3-ingredient rule, a lot of you probably know the 3-ingredient rule, that you cannot mix more than 3 ingredients. And after you are mixing more than 3, then you need a primary engineering control, whether that's a hood or an isolator. Okay, now what changed, or let's talk about less strict. So some things about the updates and changes went less strict. One of them was one of my favorites, y'all. This worked in our favor, and that was immediate use. The original USP797 guidelines prior to these new ones, there was no definition of immediate use for us. Immediate use meant emergency situation. So think hospital, acute care, ICU, code status. And a lot of us were like, that makes no sense, because when a lot of us mix our vitamins, I know me, I mix them to use immediately. But there was no definition of this, what we do, IV therapy, falling under immediate use. But guess what? Now there is. Now we can mix and fall under immediate use, but we still have to meet certain other requirements now. But we do have a provision now for immediate use, as long as we meet this, and this. Okay, so let's see what else stands out. Okay, number of components. So see how it says number of components on the left, less than 3 sterile packages or sterile products for us. So they revised that less than or equal to 3 sterile products. So think lot numbers. So if you have a multi-dose vial that has, I know I use Olympia and I use their mineral blend. It has zinc, it has manganese, it has magnesium, it has maybe copper, but there's multiple ingredients in that multi-dose vial, right? So, but that one vial counts as one ingredient, one lot number, one sterile product. Okay, so that still is the same. We still can mix in 3 or less. Now remember, your saline or your base solution does count as one ingredient. Okay, so that didn't change. So that's one of the provisions for immediate use, and not needing to be one of them, not needing to work within a laminar flow hood or isolator. Okay, so once you get to that 4th thing, if you're mixing it into the bag, then guess what? Then you need to be using a hood or isolator. Okay, so that's just the first thing to know. When do I need a hood or not? So is this possible to do? Yes. I have multiple drips on my menu that involve 2 products. Another question that I get often here, can I just IV push? Let's say I put 2 in the bag, and can I just IV push the other 10? I wouldn't recommend that. First of all, everything cannot be IV pushed. Everything shouldn't be IV pushed. And honestly, especially starting up, and that's what I teach. I teach startup. I really, really recommend and prefer that nurses keep their drips simpler at first. You don't need to come out the gate starting up with 8 and 9 ingredient drips, or 3 or 4 ingredient drips and 3 IV pushes. It really honestly increases the risk of a reaction of some sort or some undesired adverse effect anyway. So I am always a fan of keeping it simple. Okay, super simple. Keep it super simple. So can you put 2 in the bag and then IV push 1 or 2? Yes, you may have a Zofran add-on. You may have a glutathione, definitely. But keeping in mind osmolarities and all those things that come with IV therapy. But again, that's another story. But it's not, I would never advise putting, sticking with the 3 ingredients of or less, and then pushing so many other things to avoid a hood. That's a no too. But yes, there could be 1 or 2 things that you could push. And another option is, and I have a separate course where I talk about just taking 1 kit for Olympia. I use Olympia. They may be more expensive, but when I tell y'all, I have simplified. And I know at least one person is on here that I went through this process with, and she was amazed. It's totally feasible and possible, okay? This doesn't mean that you're avoiding or that you're working around the hood or that you're breaking a law. There's still so many other things that you must follow and that must be considered, and we're going to get to those, okay? But it's totally feasible to have 2 ingredient or less drips, okay? I don't consider myself creative, and it only took a little creativity for me to figure that out. And it saves so much money. And this is so important starting off. Now, if you've been at this a while and you're doing drips and your formulas are more complicated, because again, when I first took an IV therapy class, the recipes and formulas that I received were at minimum sometimes 4 ingredients. And again, I had to revamp and learn differently. But what I do is, as of right now, I use the most ingredients I ever use in a drip inside of the bag is 4. And I do divide those 4 between 2 bags. So I consider that a premium drip. That's what I designated as on my menu. That's a premium drip for me in my clinic. That's automatically that they're getting 1 liter, but they're not getting a 1 liter 1 bag. They're getting 2 500s. That does require a little bit more work and effort as far as changing out that bag and all of that. But it's been worth it to me, and it's made my life so much easier. So that is feasible to do that way. Some people say run the secondary, and no, I don't run the bags at the same time. I just run them right behind the other. So number of manipulations. A lot of us have heard that rule of no more than 2 entries into a container or package. On the revision, they didn't address it. So with that said, you could, it's not defined. If you want to stick with the best practice, I still stick with that best practice of not sticking my bag more than twice. And one of those is the spike, or when I spike the fluids. Okay, so I still stick with that. And then BUD. So it was an hour. Now we have 4. So that's another great thing. Now, I'll be honest, I do not prepare bags ever prior to having access and having the client in front of me. I just don't. That has been my protocol, my procedure, my policy from day one. I don't do it. So some people may have a situation where they prepare the bags for the day. And that, again, even doing something like that is going to require certain types of labeling and or creating something called a compounding record if you're making multiple drips or multiple products for multiple clients and leaving them. I don't. Okay. We'll skip over. So risk level, I already covered that. They went from medium, high, et cetera, to categories. And these categories do not apply to immediate use if all conditions are met. So immediate use, you're not mixing more than 3. You're infusing within 4 hours, and yeah, you can fall under immediate use. Now, the minute you're mixing more than 3, or more than 3, you're not wanting to infuse within 4 hours. Now you need to be at least at category 1. And category 1, the lowest category of compounding, is going to require a laminar flow hood or an isolator, okay? And that's okay. That is perfectly okay, because some of you may very well have drips that you don't want to change, and you're like, I'm going in, I'm doing this. That's okay. Some people are ready, and at that point in their business, amazing, that's okay. But if you're not, that is also okay. And I think that that's where a lot of people are getting frustrated, overwhelmed, and feeling like they're not a great business owner because they feel overwhelmed or not really wanting to buy that hood right yet, okay? Now, let's go down to aseptic technique. So initially, if, we didn't have immediate use, but now we do. But initially, aseptic technique was there. Well, guess what? Of course, that's always going to be there. But, and this is where it doesn't matter if you have a laminar flow hood or not. Now, every single one of us will need to have an outline of our processes and procedures, written SOPs in place. This is really the biggest thing to me. This is what I'm like, this is what is going to require some revamping, some time for me, okay? Sitting down and creating this. Personnel training initially wasn't addressed, right? Now it does not matter whether you're doing immediate use or whether you're using a hood or isolator, you must train your personnel. And as far as how often and all the things required, it's just going to depend on your levels. I want to say for the staff training, it was every 12 months, but you're going to have to train them, and we're used to this, and then have them demonstrate competency according to your facility SOPs, okay? The next section, SOPs, was not addressed previously. Now, every single one of us must have SOPs, okay? Methods to minimize contamination and mix up errors. So what is the process and protocol going to be for that? Again, personnel training, competency on this. So you're training them on aseptic technique. You're training them on, you're documenting their training. You're training them on methods to minimize contamination and medical errors, right? So some of this we know is common sense. It's just that it wasn't something that was required. Let's see, the next one, it says CSP evidence preparation performed in accordance with evidence-based information. Single dose containers. So single dose containers are just containers that there's no preservative. So when we order a multi-dose vial from a compounding pharmacy, some of them, well, the multi-dose vial will have something called benzoyl alcohol in them. And so that's what allows us to use it up to 28 days. That is still applies, okay? From the time you puncture it, you have 28 days to use that vial. A single dose container, once you puncture it, you must discard it, and within an hour. And also you can't puncture a single dose vial and then say, well, let me use a little bit, because I use Toradol. Toradol is an example of a single dose vial. I can't puncture it for one client, but maybe just because I have another one in the clinic, say, well, let me put a milligram over here and a milligram over here. No, I have to one vial to one client. If it's a single dose container, it is also a single patient or single client vial, okay? So that's something else that changed here with USP, with the updates. Let's see. And then I mentioned this a little bit ago, but when you're preparing immediate use CSPs, even though we're doing immediate use, again, we still have lots of compliance or things that we must be aware of. If you're going to prepare multiple immediate use bags, even if you're about to use them all within the next hour, if you're preparing multiple, you have to create a compounding record. And there's a resource I have here that, y'all, this is 56 pages that talks about that. So I'll send it in the follow-up email to read through. So that's that. Let's see, things that did not change, labeling. So labeling, a lot of people will say, do I have to label my IV bag? You do have to label it if you create it and you're not going to either administer it yourself or monitor the administration. Otherwise, you don't have to label it. But if you do have to label it, it does tell you what you need to know. And see how it says you must put the beyond use time period with which administration must begin. So if you do have to label it, then you would need to put the time it was prepared, kind of like when you go to the bakery and they put like the time and like Best Buy. So saying, that bag expires at this time, date and time. Let's see. And of course, this didn't change. If administration of a CSP, compounded sterile product, or your vitamins from the pharmacy has not begun by the listed BUD, then you must discard it. And that hurts, but it's true. Any questions so far? Are y'all with me? This is just other good reading. So y'all have this. There's an immediate use compounded competency assessment. There it goes. It was blurry. Some of this is great to pull for an SOP, but this is a great resource right here. Even when you're doing immediate use, it talks about removing jewelry. It talks about hand washing, sanitizer, Garbing, which is typically going to be gloves. We all know not to mix in certain areas by windows, by sinks, where food and drinks are present. You get to become your own joint commission. So that's a great resource. So I'll send this to y'all. Okay. This article goes on and on, but it is awesome. All right, I'm going to come back over and check for any questions. If y'all don't have questions, I'll be super surprised. Let me find it. Oh, there it is. Lord, y'all, I got lost. There we go. I can't find the Zoom, but y'all just ignore me. I'm gonna find it. Oh, don't do that. It's gone. Zoom makes me crazy though, y'all. It does that to me. I like go somewhere and then it like completely loses me. It's taking me everywhere. Okay, let's see. All right, y'all. Eventually I'm going to see those questions, okay? Oh, there it is. That ain't it either. I have to go all the way. Okay, so look, y'all. Because it won't let me get back to the actual, let me try this. There it goes. I found them. That was almost a disaster. Okay, let me see. Let me go up. Okay. Does anyone have SOPs they can share? Does anyone have them? I know I'm going to create them. And really the ones I'm going to create, because the way I operate my business, they won't be for utilizing a hood. They will be more so for like operations of like the training logs and that kind of thing. And those will be added to my IV therapy course. So at first they'll be added there, which is next week. So I'll be working hard over the next week, but I need them for myself as well. So it's going to be that process where I'm creating them. And okay, let's see. Arizona, do we have a replay? We got there. Arizona is not easily transparent. Well, dang it. Washington State is not. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Summer said that's great. I noticed some mobile have more than two. How are they maneuvering? They're just doing it just because they shouldn't be doing it. That's one thing I stopped. Is the minute there's that quote of if you know better, you do better. The minute I knew better, I did better. They shouldn't be doing that. Dr. Barnes said, yes, a lifesaver. So yes, I spent some time with her just showing her how to simplify and get her formulas and operate, because she will not be utilizing a hood. Do people actually feel the benefits of a 2-ingredient drip? Yes, because most of the time, I know with what I use using Olympia, those vials have more than just one ingredient in them. So far, yes. Keep in mind that a Myers, which is multiple ingredients, is even also compounded. Lots and lots of pharmacies, We Care, I'm just naming a few. They do not pay me. I'm not endorsing them, so to say. Liquivita, that's two I could think of right off that intentionally provide 2-ingredient options. Yes, most of the time those 2-ingredient options are just remember, we're not talking just ingredients. Let's take ingredients out of the equation. We're talking 2 CSPs, 2 lot numbers. That could be multiple ingredients. Okay, so does the immediate use pertain to just commercially compounded nutrients with a package insert? Olympia and Empower do not have inserts. So no, immediate use can apply to what we do. So I have not, no, the products do not have to be covered. There is another provision that talks about products having to be prepared, or when you're preparing products according to an FDA approved label, that you are not compounding. So I'm wondering if maybe that's something you've heard, but what we're doing is still considered compounding, but we can do it without a primary engineering control if we meet the requirements for immediate use. Does that make sense? Because this all is a mouthful. Every time I'm researching it, reading it, it's a whole tongue twister in my head, and then trying to say it is another story. So they do give you instructions, but these aren't FDA approved products, and they are CSPs, or compounded sterile products, and we can compound them with that 3 or less rule without the hood, even though they don't have a label. Let's see. How do you prove you yourself are trained when you're the owner and infuser? And the smile. I love it. The one option could be to get maybe someone else to check you off. Does anyone like me have like a operations manager, aka my husband? I have nurses on the team. Maybe you could have someone that's part of your team that could check you off, so to say. You could even possibly demonstrate yourself going through the processes and what you do. That would be a good way. Film it, record it once a year. If someone shows up, you have a video for them. I come up with the most random things, but that could be a way. Let's see. Oh, look, someone answered that too. Speak it out loud, demonstrate it while the person audits you, look at the list. Yeah, record yourself doing it too. Let's see. Okay, I don't understand CSP versus non-CSP. So CSP is just the terminology for the vitamins that we use, compounded sterile product. Remember, these are coming from compounded pharmacies that must also be USP797 compliant. They may be a 503A pharmacy, which is a pharmacy type that they're still CSPs, but they are patient specific. I don't want to confuse y'all, but patient specific just means that when you order that particular product, it must be assigned to one single patient, okay? Versus a 503B, as in boy pharmacy, you can order products for office use. So y'all probably have heard patient specific versus office use, right? So when you're ordering from a 503B, you're still ordering a CSP, but it is now for office use. We do not use non-compounded sterile products. What we're using and what we're dealing with in this scenario, we're dealing with sterile products for injection. Let's see. How do you know if you need a hood versus an isolator? It could be a designation by your state. Some states don't designate. So with that, you're free to proceed with either or, as long as it's ISO 5 environment. What about adding more into the bag with screw-on syringe? So no matter how you add them to the bag, you have to stick with the ingredients rules, which is 2, because remember, your solution counts as one lot number. It has its own lot number. So however you get them in there, even if you say poof, get in, that it has to be that you stick with the 2, or we'll say 3, but remember the base solution counts, 3 or less rule. Let's see, unless specified by a state where an isolator would be required over a hood, would it then depend on the anti and clean room? Yes. So if you get to where you're using an isolator and or a hood, either or, whichever one you choose, the isolator is an all-in-one clean room, but a hood, a laminar flow hood, has its own separate, having a clean room, having an anti room, having a buffer room. Either of these particular items has a certain way you have to clean them. They have certain products that must be utilized to clean them. Let's see, I had that page pulled up too. I said they have to be certified and recertified. There was a page in this heap of papers that talked about, here it is, cleaning. So if you use it, that's daily for cleaning. Disinfecting, daily. And then there's also applying sporicidal disinfectant, so which could be monthly or weekly depending on your compounding level. So for us, typically is going to be category 1 or 2. So yes, there's specifications relating to that too. And yes, you can use a connector, but no matter what, the risk level and what you're doing, it changes if you add more than 3 or you're mixing, compounding more than 3, okay? So again, even if you use a connector, you still have to stick with that. But it's great for the sake of, not having to stick the bag, so to say. Is the goal to do it aseptically or sterile? The goal is aseptic. So when you're doing immediate use and you're not inside of a hood, you're going for aseptic. When you are inside of a hood, you're also still aseptic, because guess what? before you can put anything in that hood, you have to wipe it with alcohol. So a little bit of both, but sterile is not sterile. The products that we are drawing up are sterile. So, but we're drawing them up and mixing them in via aseptic technique and possibly in a ISO 5 environment within the hood. I apologize if you already answered this. What are resources for state-specific guidelines? If you can get information on the Board of Pharmacy, if not, emailing them. If not, another great resource would always be, and we should all have one, an attorney in your state who is extremely comfortable and familiar with these things. And they're out there. They do take some findings sometimes, but there are some that are out there and are very knowledgeable about med. I always go for med spa attorneys because they're typically familiar with a whole host of things, including this. But that could be, some people even have their attorneys reach out to the Board of Pharmacy on their behalf because that seems to get a better response. So don't be afraid to do that too, because it is not easy to find. Look at this. We have all these guidelines and things we need to know, and they're behind a paywall. We have to pay $205. These are required, but we can't even get access. So let's see, I don't have training guides, but I have a protocol. Perfect. And that's all I had. But now we're going to have those specific, because again, USP797 is not just the hood. A lot of people think that there are more components that we have to follow to be compliant. So can I buy SOP from you since I already took your class? I have to create them. If you took my class, you definitely have that foundational basic one, which is still great for your general clinic. But yeah, we'll be adding, I'll be adding them to the course folder. Do you offer one-on-one help to simplify? Yes, I do. Just regular, what I was referring to, I sat down with another MP and did this. It's a mentoring call. And one of the things I'll do when I send y'all the follow-up is include all the ways that we can make this thing happen together and the ways that I can help you or support you and you can work with me, okay? But yes, I do one-on-one calls. Let's see. Oh my gosh, Mickey says my state board of pharmacy has no idea. If they don't know, this is my advice. I thought about this question. I knew it would happen. So this is what I would do. Follow the minimum standards. So if they don't know, that's a good sign. Some pharmacies have already come forward and made statements and said, this is what we expect. That's great. But if they don't know or they haven't, remember, you have this. This is your guide. So if you know what hits the fan or something explodes, you're just like, first of all, if you reached out via writing, you have, I don't know. And then you have these guidelines as the minimum. In some states, they haven't thought twice about this. That's all they go by is the minimum. Okay. So don't get too freaked out by that. Sometimes when state boards of pharmacies do come forward, they do things like say, Louisiana, no, was it Louisiana or was it South Carolina? One state was like, yeah, we're going to make a statement and this is what we think. Yeah, no one should be mixing a bag other than a pharmacist or a physician. So sometimes I'm okay with them not necessarily taking a certain stand because some have come out and done that and said no one can mix a bag other than, yeah, physicians or pharmacists. We don't want that either. Let's see. To add to your 2-ingredient combo, if you add the milligrams of what is in the multiple ingredient vials per milliliter, it's often less than if you were to add them individually. That's true. That's why I was asking if they feel the difference. They are getting considerably less strength. That is very, very true. So that's something to consider. This is where your business model may vary. Your mileage may vary. For the amount of time for what I do with IV therapy, because I do so many other things. IV therapy for me is more of an upsell and add-on. It's a nice, relaxing, it's not as involved as being, I don't do more like the functional medicine IV therapy. There's some people who do like functional medicine style where they're targeting certain conditions. They have certain protocols for certain conditions. I don't do it that way. But if you do, that is an excellent point. That is definitely a good point and something to consider. So that's going to depend on your business model. I wouldn't call what I do vanity drips. I've selected my drips very carefully, but and there's still a medical procedure. But I will say that because I'm offering them as an add-on, an upsell, and in conjunction with recovery and wellness packages that typically I'm able to, within my model, keep the drip simpler and still have clients feel good and enjoy the session without it being. Now, if I'm out here trying to do a drip relating to like neuropathy, fibromyalgia, things like that, that's going to be a bit different. And when you're getting into protocols like that, then yes, it may be time for one to up your prices and then invest in this. Let's see. But great point, Rachel. Let's see. Sarah says, where can you find the guidelines on what they determine is true? True aseptic technique versus sterile. So aseptic, there was a YouTube channel I found, and it's like from 2018, but they had good videos on that. Remember, aseptic technique is, we're wiping with alcohol, allowing to dry, wearing our gloves, not preparing in areas with food, just a whole list of things. But it's what we did in the hospital, not letting a sterile surface touch an unsterile surface. But if you're looking for that, I have like a YouTube channel that I was sitting and watching yesterday for pure entertainment, because that's the stuff that I do. And it's from 2018, but aseptic technique does not change. So I'm making a note to link that in the follow-up email too. Let's see. To follow up on clean anteroom, I was under the impression if you chose a hood, you would also need a certain ceiling. Yes, all of that is true. No cabinets in the room, and an isolator, it wouldn't matter, since yes, the isolator is clean room in one. Absolutely. That is all true. Have you seen this and know this to be true? Yes. That's why if a state is okay, I like the isolator. Now, with that said, a laminar flow hood cost versus an isolator cost is two different things. So the isolator, of course, is an all-in-one solution. You can put it in a segregated compounding area, AKA SCA, so you don't have to have those other aspects, right? But that is absolutely correct. Versus a hood may require, it may require the ante, the buffer. And keep in mind that a clean room also has to have a certain air quality too. So yeah, that could be if your state requires that. Some states may allow you to take a laminar flow hood and put it in something called a segregated compounding area. If they don't, I would aim for the isolator every time, honestly, because again, it is an all-in-one solution, even though it's more costly. And I have pictures of those, by the way. Let's scroll down. Let me go back up. That's where they were. There they are. Wait, so that's a hood, right? And hoods can be horizontal or vertical, y'all. So don't get so caught up in that. It's just the airflow. They accomplish the same mission. Your class is the more important thing. The airflow is horizontal or vertical. So when you see that, that's what that's referring to. So there it is, isolator. Yeah, so all in one. So you can kind of just roll that into anywhere. I could just roll this right into my drip lounge in a segregated area, of course, not in a patient care area, but roll it in, set up an area for it, and get going. Let's see. Oh my goodness, somebody just dropped the bomb on us. I thought there was an isolator that was a little less than that. But I do know that they are. Now, with that said, let me get my life back together. If I want to be able to offer certain drips, if you're brick and mortar and you want to be more advanced in your drips and protocols, then I found that I would say that's still worth an investment. I would still say, okay. Okay, let's see. Stacy says, what do you mean by area, patient area? Can the isolator be it can be in the same room. I just would not have it within 6 feet. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, it could be in the room. Like my drip lounge is like 700 to 800 square feet. So obviously I have a space in there where I can have an isolator and still be nowhere near patient care. If you don't, then you may want to consider, like a lot of us have one room setups. And typically I would want it 6 feet away from anything, a window, a door, where I'm preparing. So that's something else to consider if you're looking at brick and mortar. Let's see. Mickey says ISO 5 with laminar flow and hooks from centuries 1800. So that's the laminar flow. And again, that may require because a lot of people were purchasing hoods and then not really going along with the rest of the guidelines as far as training, as far as having your room set up a certain way. Let's see. And Stacy says, okay, sweet. Okay, y'all. But you know, I tell nurses when we work together on business setup, you just have to figure out what you want to offer, who you're targeting, what your business model is. I work with nurses I've helped over 100 startup, and their business model is startup. So they're not typically aiming for the more complicated formulas anyway. So with that said, I know 12,000, that startup can sound like a lot, but now me being in a few years, think about it. A lot of us have probably invested in something. My oxygen bar was 8,000. Okay. So a lot of us have probably invested in something that was a bit more pricey. And again, it's a worth it investment depending on your business model and what you're looking to offer. So this is just a quick summary of implementation. I've said a lot of it, but visit your state board of pharmacy, have an attorney on your team. Be sure of the equipment required in your state. If they don't specify, they don't know, use USP797 as your minimum. Your hoods and isolators will require testing and certifications every 6 months. That's another expense, by the way. I've heard it could cost about $1,000, not to scare you, but just be prepared for the expense. Now, IV therapy is not the quick, simple, I ain't gonna say it's not the quick, low-cost startup that it used to be. Side note though, y'all, post-op care and concierge care is, okay? Just wanted to throw that in there. But so hey, just to consider, since I have an upcoming boot camp. But formulas do matter. So you must have the 2 ingredients or less, including in 3 total, counting your base solution if you're not going to use a PEC. And remember that other USP 797 guidelines will still apply, even without the use of a hood or isolator. But I think the main thing I wanted people to know out of this situation is that, yes, you can still operate. It is still doable. It is still feasible, even if you are starting up and not yet ready or prepared to invest in a hood or isolator. Let's see. Should we coordinate with our local state pharmacy? I think that's a different company that comes out to do these certifications. And typically the hood vendors should be able to direct you. Laminar flow hood. I'm just doing a quick Google for laminar flow hood certification to see if I find anything. Most manufacturers, I would say that typically the people who sell them should be able to direct you to a company. And they also would be able to tell you, because remember I said there's certain ways it has to be cleaned, top to bottom, back to front, 70% isopropyl alcohol. Like there's certain things that also come with the hood. Let's see. How do you feel about mixing 3 ingredients or less in people's homes for mobile? That's what I did. That's what I do. I do, for my post-op drip, it's 4 ingredients and I mix 2, run a bag, 2, run the other bag. When I'm mixing in homes though, I still follow aseptic technique. I don't mix in an area near the client. I don't mix near kitchen sinks. I don't mix near window ledges or anywhere. All we're thinking is like, think of areas where there could be contaminants. So obviously you're not going to mix in a toilet by a bathroom or being by a commode. You're not going to mix by windows. You're not going to mix, on the stove or on a counter with food and particles everywhere. That's what you have to think. So you would want to set up an area that's away. You could even go as far as to wipe down with alcohol before you start. I put down a pad and then I work on that and I follow aseptic technique. So I have my alcohol, I wipe everything down. So, but I do drips on the go. But yeah, those mobile companies, they are going to have to make some changes too. So I don't know. We can still do mobile. Okay. That is still feasible. But I don't know what some of these mobile companies, they're going to have to add on some processes, procedures, and protocols, and also possibly change up their formulas. But again, I did it years ago. I changed my formulas as soon as I knew about USP797, even before the changes. And the changes, there's a lot of them. A lot of the other changes, I mean, this is like a huge document, don't apply to what we do. So I tried to pick out what applies to what we do and just answer some questions to kind of calm everyone's nerves that this is still feasible. And also that those who've taken my IV therapy class, you will have access to updates. I always update the class. So something like this will be there. Those of you who haven't taken a class with me and anyone on this webinar, you'll get this replay. It will have an expiration date though, but you'll have time to review it, listen to it again. And then from there, it will just be in my folder for people who have taken the class, of course. So, but I do updates, and this is a major one. So as I am updating and making changes to my business, I will admit that my class is startup, so the updates are not going to account for the policies and procedures for a hood. It's going to be startup and without one. So let's see. So anyone who's looking for a class, next weekend, we're having the virtual weekend. So it's post-op recovery boot camp, but day 1 is post-op senior care. Day 2 is IV therapy. So if you haven't registered, and or if you want to attend one or both days of those, go to bit.ly/bootcampnurse. That is coming up next weekend, and I'll link that also in the email. But day 2 is IV therapy boot camp, and I'll just give y'all a glimpse of the IV therapy boot camp. Those of you who know. If you know, you know. I have a USP. Y'all just saw that, a whole USP797 folder. So that is part of the resources that I share. So see, that's a whole folder. But what I do in either or of my courses, IV therapy boot camp or post-op recovery boot camp, is I have a digital course folder that's locked, and only if you took the class can you access it. But there's a post-op folder, and then there's also the IV folder. So this is the IV therapy boot camp folder. So it has resources and resources galore. This is actually the keep it simple formulas that I teach so that you can get started and not when you're not going to be using a hood. I have different information about the hood in here, good faith exams. And so this folder keeps growing, client education, just a whole host and number of things. There's videos in here, but this is a lifetime access thing. So with that said, everyone who has taken my class, this has been updated so many times. I started teaching this in November of 2021. So this course folder has been updated, but it is locked. So I have to add people one by one. But that's just to protect it and protect all the updates, right? So you can't just take the link and share it with a friend, like it has to be you. So that's the only thing. Sometimes people get locked out, but that's easy. I let you in as long as I can verify you took the course. So let's see, another question. Oh, thank you, Olga. You're so sweet. Thank you so much. How do I get access to the information in your drive? This is just showing you that my digital course folder for those who took my class, and or if you're going to take my class next week. So typically you take my class. I do have some aspects of this folder that I put for sale on. The digital store is called, I'll show y'all. There's a few forms, consents, such things. It's called payhip.com/. So there's a digital store for the Concierge Nurse Network, in case you didn't know. I try to talk about it, but it has an iron infusion protocol. It has the collaboratives. There's a couple of free things in here too, by the way. So if you've never seen this, go get some of these free business startup tasks. There's a free template to present your business to a potential collaborative physician. And then there's a few things relating to concierge care. There's even an IV therapy bootcamp from June replay, but it's just the replay, okay? So disclaimer, it's not the digital course folder, it's just the replay. But I have a few things in there, and it's payhip.com/the Concierge Nurse Network. So some things that you just saw in that folder, just a couple are here. The iron infusion protocol is something that can be purchased alone. And remember how I said, keep it simple. This is the course where I go through how I take one kit, 4 ingredients or 4 CSPs from Olympia Pharmacy and create my formulas. So my 2 ingredient formulas. So there's that. I have on-demand courses. There's an on-demand version of IV therapy boot camp. So I'll just try to link a few of these resources to y'all. If you're not in the Concierge Nurse Network Facebook group, join. If you do YouTube, follow the Concierge Nurse Network YouTube channel, because I also post things there. Let's see. Do you get access if you do mentorship? So no, I've never taken that entire course folder and made it available for sale. I've never done that. I don't even know I don't know if I could put a price on it. It's super it's honestly, that is the course. It's like you're getting the course for free. The course folder is where there's a lot of value in it. So far, no, that's not available for sale separately. I don't even know how I would put it. It's only when you take the class. Let's see. But mentorship is something I do. I do calls, one-on-ones, and do all that, but that doesn't include the course folder. And I also do VIP days. Honestly, I tell people, take the class, because it's only 745. And that's probably about the value of the course folder. So it's like you're getting the class and the course folder for that price. Med spa attorney. So where are you at, Kelly? We'll see if anyone can drop a name. I know I can drop names for Florida, but there's a couple of groups that I've heard of lately. One is Cohen, like COHEN, that operates in multiple states. I know they're based in California. There's a couple I've heard of that I'm literally in my notes on my phone compiling. Oh, there we go. Olga said Bird Adato. Is that one that operates in multiple places? Let's see. Erica says I'm here in Florida. In Florida, I deal with the health law firm. Let me look at my email. The health, I always mess up their name. The health law firm. I got it right. Here in Florida. Yeah, the health law firm for Florida. Olga says Bird Adato, BYRD Adato. Where are they located? And then Kelly's in Mississippi. AmSpa. The AmSpa is a great resource too, y'all. Even though we're doing IV therapy, I would definitely, Florida Healthcare Law Firm. So there's the health law firm. And then there's also, I have heard of Florida Healthcare Law Firm. And I think that's one of the attorneys that's with the American IV Association. Ernice Williams. What states can she work in? I definitely know about Ernice. She's a nurse. She's a nurse attorney. Heard great things about her. Okay. Adato. Let's see. MSPA is a great resource. I mean, that may be a worth it membership. It's med spa based, but of course, some of this IV therapy does overlap into med spas. What's funny is some of the med spas I know here in Florida, they don't even touch with IV therapy, but of course, there are some who do. Anybody have anything from Minnesota and Wisconsin? I promise some of these states it gets to be kind of weird, because it's like IV therapy or med spas aren't as mainstream there, and you're looking more so to deal with just general healthcare attorneys. But it really is helpful to have one that understands med spas / IV therapy. Should we coordinate for our local state pharmacy for certification? Okay, I read that. Okay. Just making sure I didn't miss something. You might, if you're going to operate like me, I lived on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. So you have to be set up to operate compliantly in both states, or pick one to start, get real good, get that compliance down, and then branch into the other one. It is hard when you live on a line, because it's so easy to just, I lived on the line all my life. I lived in Tennessee, grocery shopped in Kentucky because they had no groceries, taxes. Okay, so Sarah said with Bird Adato, you pick your state and they can give you the laws for your state. I think you got to pay, but again, that may be a worth it investment. So MSPA is definitely, I would say, I know they have a podcast too, but a great resource on such things. I just like attorneys that understand med spas, because there's so many intricacies there. If they have an understanding of that, they typically also understand IV therapy, is what I found. Let's see, Kentucky is clear as mud, laugh out loud. Oh, let's see. Somebody said they liked Legia and Cohen. I think that's one that may have multiple places. Cohen. Y'all are resourceful too now. I love it. Let me go inside of, I have not looked at the Concierge Nurse Network. I didn't mean to neglect y'all to see if I see anything in there. Okay, it's pretty quiet in there. Wait. I wonder if the live went away in there. Oh no. Let me see. Oh, there it is. Okay. I see. Wow, a lot of good information. Okay. So y'all are there. Y'all just quiet over here for the most part. All right. Let's see. Let's see. So Erica's like, it's not a stupid question at all. But what will the attorney help me with my clinic? Everything. One thing I always say is, it's a worth an investment to have an attorney. Some people will say, well, let me just get one to review forms, consents. Be sure, because I give templates in the course, but they're very much just templates. You do want to be sure that they are apply and enforceable in your state, right? So that's one thing that could help with. Another thing, definitely being compliance, risk management, reviewing protocols. They can help with literally everything. Let's see. Should I go establish one to go over HIPAA? I'm trying to understand what they would do for me. Were you saying HIPAA? It just came out as hippo. But one thing I'll say is they should be there along every step of the way as you grow, as you're hiring contractors. You need to be sure of your employee versus contractor situation. So as you're growing, expanding, evolving, they can help protect you, help protect your business, help decrease your risk, and help you with compliance every single step of the way. So I don't recommend really like a one night stand attorney. I really do. And if that's what it takes to get started, so be it. But I do recommend having a more, working longer term relationship if possible. And then, okay, Laura Fryan is healthcare attorney in Kentucky and Ohio, and she may also do Indiana. HIPAA. Okay, I figured it was let me break a little news to y'all. HIPAA really doesn't apply to us. We're not a covered HIPAA entity. But with that said, yes, we definitely want to protect our clients' protected health or private health information. But we're not we follow, but we're not, HIPAA's not going to come knocking at our door. We definitely don't want to have anyone's information shared, but we're not a HIPAA covered entity. Did you say if a drip has 4 ingredients, it cut you off? Finish that sentence, Olga. Finish typing it. It just cut you off for some reason. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed. There's so much. Yes, so that's the most ingredients I ever use in a drip. Okay, wait, I said I wouldn't say ingredients. That's the most lot numbers or products that I ever use. There could be way more ingredients involved, but yes, I use 4 CSPs and I divide them between 2 bags, 2 500s. I use normal saline or LR. Sometimes whether I use one or the other just depends. Pharmacies will typically say we recommend normal saline. I use LR sometimes when I'm seeing a post-op client, for example. So Pinky hit the send. No worries. Okay, y'all. I don't want to keep you up all night, but hopefully this was hopefully it was a review and or helpful. Hopefully it gives you a starting point, and hopefully it also tells you that this is feasible, this is possible, we can do this, especially as long as we know what to do. If we don't know, then we have these minimum standards. And I'm still trying to figure out a way to actually get full access to them. I went to try to go print them out or pay and print them out, and that was even a headache. I'm like, come on. So those are the kind of things I do so I can read and research and just be able to support you in these endeavors. So y'all are so welcome. Can you not pull up the ingredients in a 10 and do 1? So even if you pull up, that's a good question. You're good. That's a good question. Even if you pull up in a 1 syringe, even if you pull them up in separate syringes, always pull your ingredients up in separate syringes. But even if you do that, and then you're like, this is all going into a 10, it doesn't matter because you're still needing to be in compliance with that 3 ingredients or less situation or rule. Okay, so yeah, however, again, however you pull them up, however, once you're mixing in that amount, they still, let me stop sharing. They still need to be, you still need to be compliant. Even if you put your 2 ingredients in 1 syringe because you don't want to stick the bag more than once. I don't like doing it though, it's super messy. But even with that said, you still have to comply with the numbers that USP 797 requires. A good question. Y'all always have good ones, especially in the group. The Concierge Nurse Network Facebook group. And we actually have a separate USP 797 chat in there. So if you join, go to the chat. You can always, even after this meeting, drop some questions in there, comments, concerns, thoughts, anything new that you learned. That's a good place to come hang out. You can push the other vitamin after mixing the 2 though. Yes, you can. I just said be reasonable with your pushes. Like I wouldn't go pushing 5 vitamins. So keeping in mind too that some things shouldn't be pushed. So you have to really be careful. Like let's think magnesium. Has anyone ever pushed magnesium? It's not fun. So some people don't have a great reaction to that. So keeping that in mind too. And you always look at your label. The pharmacy will tell you that if something can be IV or IM. Some things are just better IM versus IV. But yes, you can put your 2 ingredients in. Let's say you have, you know, one that is okay. And according to the label, can be IV pushed, and it's not magnesium because I would not be pushed that. Then yes, you can. Right, everyone. Great questions, great interaction. I truly appreciate you all. Again, I'm going to type, you could take a look and learn more about the boot camps. I'm going to type that link in the chat too, and then I will let y'all bit.ly/bootcamp nurse. And remembering that boot camp is post-op recovery and or IV therapy boot camp. So 2-day event over the course of a weekend. Y'all are very welcome. Thank you all who were able to join live. Those who were not, I hope you enjoy this replay and also the attached information that I will be sharing with you. And y'all are very welcome. And it has been my pleasure as always. And my dog's barking. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just like, y'all, thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Let's see. Thank y'all so much. The link didn't show. Let me do it one more time. And I don't know. Oh, I know why. Because y'all were saying thank you. bit.ly/bootcamp nurse. And I'll be sure to link it in the email that I send out. Just look out for that tomorrow, y'all. If y'all don't open it, I'm gonna resend it to you too. Because I know some people will say, I didn't get the replay. I didn't get the replay. I'm gonna resend it. If I see that you're on the not open list, because it tells you, resend it to you. Then the email comes, y'all. Be sure, like, if you want to keep up, the emails come from the Concierge Nurse Network. So, all right, everyone, have a wonderful evening and thank you again.